Okay, so the first thing I need to do when I'm rolling out pie crust dough, I let this get to the room temperature so it's not solid from the fridge. And I've got to flour my board generously to make sure that the dough is not going to stick to the board as I'm rolling it out. I also like to flour my rolling pin, again generously, because I don't want the butter that is in there as my hands warm things up, as the room temperature warms things up. I do not want the butter to just make it stick all the way. So that's why we need so much flour. Probably looks a little ridiculous how much flour, but that's okay, we need it. And that's what we're doing. We're kneading it just a little bit to get it down to a reasonable size so that we can start rolling it out.
Are you sure you need to knead it?
Yeah, just a little bit, just to get it compressed more. Kind of like you would do with sugar cookies. You want it in a workable size.
It's like a new song, I need you to knead me.
That's too funny. So I like to do a few passes away from me, and you'll see how it's a little uneven because you tend to put more pressure the further you get away from yourself. So you have to turn it and make sure that it's getting even pressure. You can do that also if you have the rings that go on the side of your rolling pin, but this is the rolling pin that I like to use. I do have one of those, but I use that more for when I'm doing cookies. For pie dough, I just like to be able to give it some even pressure with my hands.
And if you like that rolling pin, you better put a ring on it.
Because of all the cooking that we're doing today, I left my wedding rings upstairs. Hubby has a sense of humor for sure. Anyway, so we keep turning it to make sure that we're getting even pressure. And see how it really doesn't take long? When I made this pie crust you saw in the previous video, it took maybe 5-10 minutes between the food processor and kneading it by hand to get it into the bowl. And then we let it sit overnight in the fridge. And look at that, got more than enough there. And we're gonna cut with a knife. We can make it a little bit bigger because when it sinks down into the pan, we still want room for it to kind of go down into the pan. And you'll see that I've got 2 crusts here ready to roll out. This is just for the bottom. It was equal butter to flour, so 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of butter, and a little bit of salt and some ice water gave me these 2 pie crusts. And since we've got apple pie going, because you saw me slice the apples and those are still on the stove there with a stick of butter, that's what's going to happen, is we need a top and a bottom because it's apple pie. So we need to have some steam holes here because we're going to par bake this crust in a couple minutes. Set that aside and I can start rolling out this one. And I'm taking the warm dough that I just rolled out that was extra and adding it to this one that I didn't roll out yet. Get your floured up board here so you know it's going to get together nicely. Squish it just a little bit because we want it in a better form. And since I added it to it, we want it to all be together.
How do you decide which one's top and which one's bottom?
I let the pie crust decide that for me, because if I end up rolling out something that's really weird looking and I don't want to have to roll it out again, even though that would make it more layers and more flaky because it's like a laminated dough the more times you roll it out, I like to use the weird shaped one for the top, because when you cut the lattice strips for the top, it really doesn't matter how perfect that circle is. But for the bottom, you want to make sure that you have it very even so that you don't have any places that are going to burn. And what you need to do is have it big enough plus some, like you saw me draw a bigger circle than the pie plate, so that it can actually be sunk down into the pan and not just the exact size of a 9-inch pie plate. So that's what you want. So here we go, a couple passes. And I know my pressure is uneven, so I'm only going to do a couple passes before I turn. There we go. You kind of drag some more flour into the party here. And it goes really quickly. I do need to stir the apples in a minute. They're kind of steaming themselves in a nice bath of butter right now. And they're having a good time, but the next thing we're going to have to do is add sugar to that party once they've left a lot of the moisture behind in the atmosphere. We're going to have to add some sugar to thicken up that buttery, syrupy sauce that's going to go inside the par-baked crust. So this will be good in just a minute. I'll do one more this way. And see how this doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but we do want it to be an even thickness, because these are going to get cut into strips for a lattice top once we have it with the apples in the par-baked shell. All right, so that's that. We got to check on the apples. Do you want to stop and come back to make it shorter?